what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dylan, and I'm very excited for a review today of Conclave, Edward Berger's newest film. And I think our discussion here is going to be rather interesting because I saw this film last night. Matt, it's been a little bit since you've seen the film.
Honestly, and this doesn't speak to my enjoyment of the film, I've barely thought about it since seeing it at TIFF. There were so many movies that I was watching. I liked this one a lot, but it wasn't one that haunted me through the rest of the festival after I watched it. So I might be a little bit rusty on some parts of the movie, but I think I have a pretty good memory of it.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, before we dive into the film today, as always, if you're new here, consider dropping a like and a subscription. You keep up to date with everything that we're doing on the channel, festival news, awards predictions, and awards reactions. We're about to dive into that very fun time of the season. But Matt, take us away with the plot synopsis.
And before we get started, I will warn you later on in the video, we will get into spoiler territory. Before we do that, we will give a warning. So if you haven't seen the film yet, as it is not in theaters until the 25th of October, then you can jump out of the video then and return later. But until that point, we will not be talking spoilers. So just be warned later on. Now, Conclave is the newest film from director Edward Berger, famed for All Quiet on the Western Front from a few years ago. And Conclave follows one of the most secretive and ancient events in the modern world, which is the selection of a new pope, the papal conclave. So the pope is dead, and Cardinal Lawrence, a trusted administrator in the Vatican, is tasked with running this process of the papal conclave. Once all of the cardinals have gathered from around the world, they're locked together in the halls of the Vatican and forced to vote until they have a majority. But as the voting begins, Lawrence finds himself at the center of multiple different conspiracies, secrets, lies, all of these different things at play that may influence the outcome of this election, the outcome of an election that could shape the entire world. And I gotta say, I had a great time with this one back at TIFF. It certainly wasn't the weighty film that I was expecting it to be from the trailer or the initial images or even the synopsis that I just gave. A film about a vote that could change the course of the entire world, a film about a film about cardinals gathering to vote for a new pope. It doesn't seem like something that's going to be light and breezy, but this film really is. It sort of falls under that Agatha Christie-esque feeling that we've gotten recently from films like Knives Out, See How They Run, and it's about uncovering secrets, lies. It's about the importance of voting, the weight of a vote. And all year long, I've been calling Conclave an airport paperback, and I definitely stand by that, but in a positive way now. I think earlier in the year I was saying that as a way to be like, oh, Conclave might not be good. It feels like it's the type of thing that you'd buy in an airport variety store or whatever. But now I feel like it's kind of a good thing that it's that airport paperback. It's fun. It's weightless. It's just a good time at the movies. And sometimes we need that, especially as it's talking about more serious topics. And I'm sure that you're going to get deeper into this, but damn, those performances, they are excellent, and it's got some very well done technical design elements. Like I said, it's not a film I've been thinking a lot about since I saw it back at TIFF. It's not going to stay with me for years afterwards, but it's the type of movie that for the 2 hours it's on, you're going to be having a very good time. You are going to be fully in the mystery, wanting to learn all of these conspiracies, see how things unfold. It is just a really good time of a movie, and it's one that I think is going to do very well with audiences.
And to kind of backpack off of what you just said there, for the 2 hours that Conclave was in front of me, I found this to be very gripping, and I love its introspective exploration of elections and human nature, because I think this film just brilliantly examines this debate. We're inside of a giant debate here, at least in the United States, and I feel like this film is a great parallel for a lot of people out there who are kind of inside and outside of this election that's going on here in the States. And another aspect of Conclave that I very much enjoy is how it tackles the age-old question, is anyone truly without sin? But we will dive into that a little bit later on when we dive into spoilers. But as you talked about, the performances inside of this film are fantastic, and it's headlined by Ray Fiennes, who finally gets another moment to shine in the leading role, and I feel like he really knocks it out of the park. He's not very over the top. It's a very reserved performance. Most of you people out there have seen it, Oppenheimer from last year, think about Cillian Murphy just without the explosive scenes later on down the line. The first half of the film, he's very much embodying the world is on his shoulders. He feels the weight of the room, and you can see the toll it's taking on him, especially after losing someone that he very much cares about, being the deceased Pope. But then the rest of the ensemble, I think, is fantastic. There's specific members that are very good, but one that has been getting a lot of buzz online is Isabel Rossellini, who maybe she's not in this film very much, but she has one scene that is just the ultimate mic drop moment of 2024. And when you see this film play out, when you see that scene, my whole theater just gasped, and I feel like that is the sign of just a super effective moment. And I don't want to reveal too much about Conclave's plot or its themes or its messaging currently, because like I said, we're going to dive into that more in spoilers territory down the line. But before this screening started, I think it's something that you touched on a little bit as well, Matt, is a lot of the other press here in Philadelphia were kind of laughing at the fact a PG movie about the election of a pope inside the Vatican. How entertaining is this going to be? It seems boring. It seems like a snooze fest. It seems like this film's for no one. But I feel like the technical craft work, the amazing acting, Edward Berger's direction, it all comes together to make this engaging, entertaining story. And when we left this cinema screen, everyone was talking. They were buzzing. They wanted to talk about this film. And if I had to make one small critique, I think the conclusion, it feels a little bit abrupt, and it feels like it could have benefited from additional few scenes. But overall, I really enjoyed what this film had to offer. And I think that Conclave is a film that a lot of people should go out and experience, even if you think this film sounds boring or elections is something you want to stay away from at the moment. It has a fantastic string-heavy score by Volker, the guy that we all know from the Brom, Brom, Brom from All Quiet. He's back with a score that I think is even better than that one. And with all that being said, we're going to dive into our spoiler section of the video now. So if you haven't seen the film, urge you, go out to watch Conclave when it hits your local cinema. But for the people who have seen it, or if you're watching this one down the line, we're going to talk all those spoilers now.
Anyways, I mentioned the Agatha Christie influence before, and I want to kind of compare and contrast to some of these other Agatha Christie homages that we've seen recently. Knives Out, Glass Onion, See How They Run, and I think for one thing, a major thing that sets this apart from those movies, those pure Agatha Christie murder mysteries, is, for one thing, this just isn't a murder mystery. But it is a really great mystery where everyone is a suspect. And I just found it really cool to do that sort of murder mystery formula where no one has been murdered. I liked that.
I think the comparison here is kind of twofold, because I think there's some people who will go into Conclave thinking it is a murder mystery, even though it's revealed right away the Pope passed away from a heart attack. I think especially even at my screening last night, there's someone who was saying at the end of the film, like, oh, I was speculating who killed the Pope the whole time. Was it John Lithgow? Was it Ralph Fiennes? Was it someone else? And is it all just a big cover-up to take the crown, to take the top position? But I think the film works in spite of that, even though it's not that. There's so many elements working in its favor. And one thing of the mystery genre that I think really shows what is a good, captivating film is how it can keep giving you new aspects of information, little pieces here and there as the film goes on, and none of them feel forced or they don't feel overwhelming. It just keeps peering you into this world step by step until you reach the ultimate finale, and then the conclusion of this film. Some will really work, some may not as much, but the ride is so twisty, it's so turny, it's so entertaining, and it's very tight. Nothing in this film feels overstuffed. It all feels necessary to understand the film's overall messaging.
What you were saying about John Lithgow is really real. I kept thinking, because I'd heard so many people compare the movie to Agatha Christie, I was expecting it to kind of turn into that murder mystery. But I definitely thought for a while that it was going to be revealed that John Lithgow had the Pope killed or poisoned him or something in relation to what the Pope was going to reveal about that cardinal. And that was really interesting because it kind of takes you for a loop, expecting it to turn into that murder mystery, thinking it might go in that direction, and then instead of doing that, it turns into a different kind of mystery, a mystery where everyone has something to hide. It's not that there's one person hiding that they did a murder. It's that everyone is trying to cover up the unsavory details about their lives. And the interesting thing about this is seeing a mystery where every corner, every room has different secrets to hold, and none of it's the same. Like it's not like we're charging towards an answer or a conclusion that we know. It's about the things that we don't know. That's really cool to me.
That was very interesting to me as well, because like you said, there's so many of the Cardinals here who are against his morals and against his stances, but as it seems to be a quote-unquote witch hunt going out there of who has the most non-pure past, the guy who may have the most red flags may be the cleanest of all of them in terms of his actions outside of the church.
Mm-hmm. I think that one of the interesting moral dilemmas there was when they were talking about whether or not they should reveal the embezzlement with John Lithgow, because the dilemma there of, if we reveal this, he will lose all of his votes, and those votes will then go to Tedesco, and Tedesco is the greater of two evils. So do we reveal it, or do we keep it safe to keep that vote split, to keep the far right of the church from coalescing towards one candidate? And I think that goes to the portrayal of the importance of a vote in this film, and the conversation that this film is bringing up about what a vote represents and strategy in the political process. What is the place of a strategic vote? Should we vote with our heart? Should we vote for the candidate that we think is best for the role? Or should we vote for who we think aligns closest with us that actually has a chance of winning? What if everyone just voted for their heart? Where would we be at that point? And while I appreciate the sentiment, I do also kind of think that that is a little bit of dangerous rhetoric. I feel like telling people to vote for people who have absolutely no chance of winning is a little irresponsible. But I don't know. Maybe I'm off base on that. Maybe I just haven't been educated enough on that topic.
I guess I didn't really read it as much as that. I found the more interesting aspect of it is going into how you can appear to other people. You can present yourself as pure and as clean, but you can peel back the layers and see more and more faults with people individually. And then I think it poses the question, if you know about someone's faults, if you know about someone's wrongful actions, whether they were from last week or they're from 30 years ago, does that tarnish their image and their brand, and will you still want to support them? And then it goes on the flip side. We talk about Tedesco, where maybe he has nothing he's hiding because he's open and upfront with all of his non-nice beliefs we see inside the film. He's racist towards his fellow Cardinals. He's very not in support of various social causes that would bring people together. He wants to keep people apart. And it just poses this great debate inside my head and all of these thoughts about how do you view people's presentations of themselves? If they're hiding something that they may not want you to know, does that tarnish their image overall?
And through that, I think Cardinal Lawrence's character arc is quite fascinating, because the whole journey he has through the film takes him from the belief in the purity of election based on character. The idea of this papal conclave where they all come in knowing what they know about each other. They are shut off from the rest of the world so that no news can influence them. Nothing can change their opinions, and they only vote on the people that they know and the things that they know about these people already, the preconceived notions that they have. And by the end of the film, Cardinal Lawrence has changed his mind from the purity of this election to being a messy bitch who spills the tea on everyone. You know, he is just out there spilling all the secrets, making sure everyone knows. And I really appreciate that rather than condemning Lawrence for breaking the tradition of this sequester, it explores the idea that the more information we have available about a candidate in a political race, the better informed our choices will be. I mean, the film's bringing up this question of, do candidates for major election deserve privacy? Should we be able to kind of scour through their lives, know everything about them, know their faults, the things that might make them unfit to lead, unfit to rule? So I'm not sure if the film's advocating for that invasion of privacy or if it's not, and I don't know where I stand on that. And I like movies that don't answer questions, they just pose them. And this one's asking a question that it does not have an answer to.
And I think to take that one step further, the film is posing that question and also showing you both sides of that die, showing what happens when you showcase what has happened in the past and what happens if you keep things under wrap, because you talk about Cardinal Lawrence, who's played by Ralph Fiennes. His character at the beginning, like you said, wants to take things by the book, but as things starting to happen, he notices one candidate is being exposed. And then it seems like, at least from my point of view, is he becomes more open to making the playing field a little bit more level by airing stuff out on both sides. And once he learns of the previous pope being okay with revealing some information while keeping other information hidden for the greater good, you really see the evolution of his character from, at the beginning of the film, not really wanting to do anything inside of this conclave and wanting to get out, to fully embracing it and potentially taking on this much larger role if the election played another way. And I just think that the film, like you said, it poses questions. It shows you both sides if you agree or disagree with the question, and lets the audience make their own personal beliefs upon what their answer should be.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of like in the end that even though it doesn't give you the full answer to the question it's asking, it does show you in the end that Cardinal Lawrence is not going to reveal this kind of insubstantial but very large piece of information that he learns. Something that is not important whatsoever, something that is deeply private and personal, and yet is something that he found out during the election. And I think it kind of comes down to what attacks are personal and what attacks are political. You know, revealing something about someone's indiscretions in the past few months, totally chill. Revealing that someone's a hypocrite, someone who's been talking so much against sex outside of wedlock, who himself is the absent father of a bastard child. Those things, I feel like, are not personal attacks, they're political attacks. But when we get into this question of the identity of the person who's eventually elected pope, that question, that information is personal, not political. And so when he has that dilemma, do I reveal this? Do I not reveal it? I think it gives us a little bit of the answer of there are some bits of information that people deserve to be private. Cardinal Benitez, the new pope, it's revealed at the very end that he is actually intersex, and that he has a uterus and internally female parts. And I had heard a lot of people talk about the book as like this is kind of a shocking and potentially transphobic ending. I definitely didn't read it like that in the movie. I felt like it was handled pretty well. But that said, it's a little bit of a left field, and I'm not sure how I feel about the concept of using that as like a shocking twist meant to make the audience gasp. How did you feel about it?
I had stayed away from a lot of the details about Conclave ahead of time, so I did not know the twist heading into the film or the rumored controversy around the ending. So to me, it definitely came out of left field. I think it was an effective aspect coming out of nowhere, but it's one of those things where I will be very interested upon a rewatch knowing the ending. Do they lay any groundwork for that to make the ending feel a little bit more worthwhile and fully complete, or is it something that's completely just out of nowhere, which then to me would cause a little bit of issues with the ending, because if it's just there for shock value compared to being there to make a real social message or making a statement, those are two completely different things, at least for me. But going on to our next question before we dive into some more conversation around Conclave as a whole, we kind of mentioned this before, the ensemble. At least for me, I found it to be one of the best of 2024, but I think if you go back to one of the best ensembles of 2022 being Women Talking, you ask 100 people, you're going to get like 80 different answers of who's the best person in this ensemble. And I feel like the same thing's going to happen here for Conclave. So who would you say, if you take out Ralph Fiennes, because obviously he's unequivocally the lead of this film, if you had to go with someone else, who would it be?
I think I got to go with Carlos Diaz. Carlos Diaz is definitely my shining star in the movie, just because, I mean, there's so many quiet scenes of just quiet beauty. I don't know how else to describe his performance. He comes in with being the one that no one knows, and he very clearly and very quickly becomes the focus. You know, he is someone who has been around the world, has been preaching what he believes, and I think it's a powerful performance, especially leading up to the monologue that he gets in the end. That monologue is such a scene stealer, and if I had to predict anyone from the ensemble to get a supporting nomination outside of Isabella Rossellini, it would probably be Carlos Diaz, just because of the power of that monologue that he gets. Oh, it's beautiful. And you feel in that moment the energy in the room where he's giving that monologue changes, and you know immediately he just won the election.
That moment is, I think, honestly, maybe even more so than the Rossellini one that I talked about before, the most impactful moment of the film, even if the Rossellini one is like the mic drop moment of this movie. But I do agree, if someone is going to be nominated as supporting actor, the Oscars, maybe not, but BAFTA, definitely, I could see Diaz being that person to be kind of just like in the film, leveled up to be the one elected for the nomination. But speaking of some other people in here, I think one of the strongest positives of this ensemble is no two people are giving the same performance. It's all different qualities and different aspects coming together in this shared space. Kind of along the same lines of Carlos Diaz, Lucien Samadi, who plays Cardinal Adeyemi, I think has a very important and impactful moment as well when it's revealed that Cardinal Lawrence knows about his troubled past and his child out of wedlock. And I think that moment, he very much just effectively portrays a completely different emotion than what we get with. Then you go over to a completely different performance of Cardinal Tedesco, where he is just so forceful throughout the film, and he has this commanding energy like you would see out of a candidate for like a political election, where he is coming with the force, he's attacking, he's always on the prowl, and it's so effective, and you understand why people would follow him. And then you go to other people like with Stanley Tucci's Cardinal Bellelli, where you see he wants it. He won't admit he wants it. It's a very reserved performance. And if you go back to like early predictions, there's always like, oh, Tucci would be in. He just doesn't have the screen time, people basing on the book. But here, I think he does have the screen time. And I think what he's doing is very effective. It's just not very showy. It's a very reserved performance. He keeps it to himself. I think it's so much more impactful with him keeping it inside than if he blew up every scene that he's on. Kind of like John Lithgow's Cardinal Tremblay, where he's always exploding, he's always blown up, he's always yelling, and it works so well for that character.
I feel like one small issue I have is that being stuck inside with the Conclave, while it is the intent to sequester us with the Cardinals, make us completely unaware of what's happening outside in the world, the way that the bomb happens at the very end of the movie, and it comes so out of left field. Suddenly there's an explosion. We didn't know that anything was happening outside. And then it rushes all the way through the third act, just telling us that something happened outside, not really getting into any of the details. I wanted to know a little bit more about that. And again, it is the intent to keep us in the dark the same way that the Cardinals were, but I just have this nagging feeling that I wanted to know more about what's happening in this story, what's happening in this world.
I guess I get that a little bit, but I feel like just like inside the film you talk about being with the Cardinals, I feel like we're very much with Cardinal Lawrence, who is Ray Fiennes, and I feel like he learns, at least throughout the film, little details where it may not be in full, but I forgot who the other person was, like the assistant who comes up to him like saying, blah, blah, blah is going outside. He's like, no, don't tell me. And then later on, he's like, okay, so what happened? So maybe the explosion happened out of left field in the moment, but then we got the information pretty shortly after, which then leads into that giant debate between Tedesco and Benitez later on down the line, where it's about, these are the people who are doing outside, we must fight them, we must have a war. And then on the complete opposite side, Benitez is like, why are we fighting them? We must come together. This is what our message is to do. And I feel like that is ultimately what leads to his victory of, I wouldn't know if it call it a victory, because a big message of this film is the people who want something, those are the ones to watch out for. The people who accept the call to action are the ones who are just and are the ones who are pure with the best intentions. And I feel like that scene especially echoes in that theme that the film overall is very hardly pushing on us.
Yeah, I do love that theme, that anyone who seeks power is not worthy of it. And I like that part of the character arc of Cardinal Lawrence as well, because at first he's not seeking power, and that's why he seems like he'd be a good pope. But as soon as he starts to seek power, suddenly he's not right for it anymore. And then it falls to someone else who's genuinely not interested in being the pope. And that's a pretty beautiful thing. Now let's talk ratings. I mean, how are you feeling on this movie? We both clearly like it a lot. I'm going to go with a light 8 out of 10 on this one.
I think I'm going to stay in the 8 range and go from like a mid 8 to like a high 8. I really enjoyed it, but like you, I feel like this is one where like in a year later on when we do our Best Picture Revisiting series, I'm going to be like, I really enjoyed that, but it's not sticking with me very much, even if I was hooked while watching it.
And like I said, we are an Oscar channel. We do talk about predictions and Oscar prospects here. So how are we feeling at this point for this film's Oscar prospects?
I guess for me, it's not that much of a wide range. It feels pretty concise of what its best things are, and then if it's very strong, what additional nominations would be. So for me, I would have it for picture, Ray Fiennes, adapted, editing. I think that's the baseline. And then you would add in, not add in score. At least at the moment, I would have it in for picture, Fiennes, adapted, and score. That would be its absolute lowest baseline. But then I think director and editing would come along pretty easily. So that would have it at 6 for me. And then if it's very strong, if this becomes a front runner, like to win the BAFTA, or to have a very strong TV awards trajectory, like at CCA and at Golden Globe, then maybe cinematography, production, costumes, and sound would pop its head up. But currently, I'm just going with those aforementioned 6.
I have it for 9 nominations at this point, which feels a little excessive. And I think that something I feel on Conclave is that this is an easy one to cut out of some of the tech categories. It's an easy one to cut out of some of those fringe nominations because it's a film that, while I feel like everyone is going to like it, it's going to struggle to have the immense passion that it might need to get some broader support. So, while it might very easily get those nominations that are very obvious, it might struggle to land in, like you said, costumes or sound or cinematography or editing. Those could be chopped quite easily. But I think that it's going to do very well. It might just struggle with wins because of the lack of people saying this is the absolute best of the year, bar none. Now, I would say, I think that based on the weakness of the supporting actress lineup and Isabella Rossellini being someone who is evidently a scene stealer, she has that mic drop moment that you've talked about. She also has a legacy. She's never been nominated for an Academy Award. She is the daughter of Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini. And, she's a Hollywood legend, and she's never been nominated. And it feels a little bit like Jamie Lee Curtis. She has less to do than Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's not going to win. Most certainly not going to win. But I do think that her presence through multiple scenes and her monologue in that one scene could be enough to snatch her a 5th spot nomination. And I do question, if one supporting actor got in, would it be Stanley Tucci? Would it be Carlos Diaz? Would it be someone else? Or should we just write off supporting actor altogether because no one can, say that one person is evidently better than everyone else?
I wouldn't write it off entirely just due to how not deep that category seems at the moment. I feel like when I say not deep, I mean there's not many locks. There's a lot of names in that category. It's just like, who do you have after the initial top 3? And I feel like if you ask a lot of people, they'll have different number 4s and different number 5s. So I feel like if it's going to be someone, I think it's going to be what we see at BAFTA every year, where there's always like one person who gets in that BAFTA who gets in like nowhere else, or BAFTA with CCA or BAFTA with Globe. And I feel like if that happens to be Tucci, if that happens to be Diaz, if that happens to even be Rossellini on the other side of the thing, they could be the one that really fill that slot this year. I know stats aren't meant to happen every year, but like the correlation stat, how like last year we thought like, oh, it's going to be Hooler for Zone of Interest, and it happened to actually be Ferrera with Barbie, and that would be a very similar type nomination to Rossellini here, where it's one monologue that really gets you in. Because, and I've had to compare Rossellini to someone, I don't even know if it would be Ferrera in terms of overall screen times, because Ferrera's in a lot of Barbie, even though she really just has like one very huge scene. To me, she's more like Rhea Perlman, who plays Ruth in Barbie, who really isn't in the movie all too much, but has just one moment that is just so impactful and so just the type of Academy nomination that you would get. And I just don't know if she can find her way in. But like you said, this category is desolate. You can't fill out a 5 currently. And I mean, I would understand why someone has Rossellini, but for me, unless Conclave is a top 3, top 4 type movie on nomination morning, I just don't really see her being that 5th. And I think it will go to someone who's currently just not in a Best Picture type movie. Who that is, I don't really know to tell you right now.
I also will say I think this is win competitive in adapted screenplay, purely because while I would say that original screenplay, we're desperate for, it's such a shallow field, of like who the hell is getting nominated in that category, the win contention there is ferocious with Anora and The Brutalist. But in the adapted category, there's so many more movies to pull from that could get nominated, but so few feel like they could be screenplay winners. And this, at least to me, feels like a more promising win contender in adapted screenplay than Sing Sing or Nickel Boys, for two examples.
I would still have Sing Sing as my number one, but I think that and Conclave will probably split the majority of adapted prizes as we get throughout awards season. And I feel like at the end of the day, they'll be kind of like 60-40, as we saw kind of last year. I guess it wasn't even that way last year with Anatomy and Holdovers, but like how Anatomy and Holdovers to some people felt kind of like a neck-and-neck race all the way up until the very end. And I feel like that's kind of what we're going to have with Conclave and Sing Sing, unless one of them makes that leap to become top three inside our Best Picture race.
That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for sticking around. I hope we didn't spoil anything for you, but if we did, it's your fault. So, thank you so much for watching. As always, my name's Matt.
My name's Dyl, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.